name is Jelelle Awen, and this is day 7, wow, of 33 days with me, calling this series Metamorphosis, because I feel that that really captures what we're being invited into during Ascension. So it really acknowledges this process. Metamorphosis is a process, right? So we begin in this kind of caterpillar, we could call that the 3D phase for us. And then we go into this cocoon, which is part of 4th dimensional or 4D transitional, where our soul is starting. The soul is really, to me, what creates that cocoon. It comes into our lives and kind of shakes up our 3D self and offers to our 3D self that maybe it's time to sprout those wings that we all are born with, that we all have as sacred humans. And the soul really makes it safe to go into that transition as well. And this cocoon, I've also called it the cozy cave. I've called it the lone wolf phase. It's really a time for which so much maybe has been let go of or pushed away from, or even if it hasn't totally been let go of, there's a consciousness of unhappiness. There's a consciousness of frustration. There's a consciousness of wanting more than what you currently have. And I don't know how conscious a caterpillar is that it wants to be a butterfly, but somewhere in its DNA is that destiny, right? It's going to become a butterfly. And I feel like our process in Ascension is very similar. It's in our DNA to become what we're meant to be as sacred humans, to become what we're meant to be as 5D selves, to become what I've called our butterfly selves. And to go into the cocoon phase is to recognize that the old state of the caterpillar, our caterpillar self, doesn't operate anymore. Like it doesn't function in the same way that it used to. It doesn't operate on the same fuel that it used to. And we've got to retract back into this cocoon. That could look different for different people. Obviously, we're all different that way. For me, my cocoon phase really needed, and I signed up for, community. So I've had the support for over a decade of this sacred union with Raphael. So we've both been going into our cocoons together, separately as individual soul sparks of consciousness, yet making the same choices about that, leaving the same geographies, completing relationships with our families when that felt right for us. And moving into, especially 3 years ago when we moved here to Mexico, and left our caterpillar life, pretty cozy life of painting contracting income, and to venture out into living remotely and connecting our soul purpose work, Soulful Heart, with our money earning and our livelihood and community. I also drew soul family in Kalena and Gabriel and Rihanna, who also, Rihanna's my daughter, so we signed up to be birth family and soul family, and that's always wonderful. And Gabriel's my ex-husband, so we were definitely signed up to be together for a long time. And we've had phases of taking space from the relationship when our cocoon phases didn't quite align with each other until they did. And so this my path around this maybe is different than your path around this. Perhaps for you, it's been very important, and for parts of you, to be alone, to disconnect from and disengage from the previous relationships that you had that were based in 3D relationality. 3D relationality is about comfort, safety, familiarity. It's based on roles, staying the same, this unspoken agreement that we're going to remain like this. I call it locked in. It's a locked in reality. There's not a lot of play there in terms of being your soul self, in terms of arising into, there's not a lot of metamorphosis in most 3D relationships. And kind of the glue that holds it all together is this unconscious or undigested trauma held by parts of us that I've been talking about over these last 7 days. And in the soul as well, of course. That's maybe stronger. That's sometimes the stronger glue once you start getting in there. And I don't feel like you can really get into, if a relationship is locked and there's not a lot of play, unless both people are doing this, emerging out, going into their cocoons. This creates play. This creates metaspace. This creates air in the relationship. It opens up the ceiling, we could say, for something new to arise. But without that, a lot of times, let's say a soul who's chosen to stay in the 3D frequency, that's just the right path for them. But you're in your awakening, you're cocooning, you're cocooning and bursting out. That's kind of 4D, right? It's not just this peaceful cocooning. It's sometimes feeling peaceful, sometimes thrashing. Oh, it's too small in here. I want it to be bigger. Parts lashing out. It's death and rebirth. It's the mess and the bliss. So you might be going through all of this awakening. And if someone that you're in relationship with is not, you are very much in different worlds. You're speaking different languages. You are at different vibrational frequencies. You're realizing much different things. And really the only way in this metamorphosizing state that you're in, that this relationship could be nourishing for you, would require you to lower your frequency, to be something that you're not anymore. And over time, the more you awaken, the more this is uncomfortable for you. And eventually, parts of you don't even want to do it anymore. The protector doesn't even want it. The protectors, this is what's interesting. In my experience working with them, with people, if you ask your protector how it feels about these 3D relationships, it's usually very clear that it doesn't want them, that it's not happy, that it requires a vigilance from your protector while you remain within them. So they will often support you actually to complete or transition or whatever it is that needs to happen within these relationships for you. They can be actually a source of objective support, which is interesting. So often the parts that may be more tied in are the inner teenager. And this seems to be because so much of our social reality, our emotional body related to our social reality, was offered when we were teenagers. And so our experience with peers formulated something here. Our experience with our parents and our caregivers formulated something here, so that this really is the source, it turns out, of so much of what we experience in relationships is from our teenager. This is so interesting to me because I am 10 minutes into this video and this is not what I intended to talk about today. This isn't what I was going to talk about today, but I think what's happening is what happens when I write, which is I start connecting in with the consciousness of those that are taking this in and are following this, and kind of we start to collaborate together. So it's almost like you're telling me this is what you want to hear about, at least in this moment anyway, versus I woke up and I was kind of, what am I going to talk about? Oh, I'll talk about this. And now I'm talking about what I'm talking about. So I'm just being transparent with that, because this process of showing up for video every day like this for 33 days is new for me, of course. But it's really not, it's just another medium. This is how I show up to write. I very rarely know what I'm going to write about. It's usually comes to me. That's a when, just like the last name, is this divine inspiration download that comes in, and the words form from there. It's often inspired from sessions that I've had with people and with women, with the digestion of that. Often inspired by my relationship with Raphael, my relationships within community, something I'll take in that will find me online, and then I want to offer our Soulful Heart way of feeling that. Those are some of the places of inspiration for me. Well, especially my own process is the number one inspiration. So I guess what the theme is today, I wonder if these videos are just going to get less and less linear. That's possible too. I guess the theme today, though, this metamorphosis idea, this need for the cocoon. Let's go back to that for a minute, because I always love this analogy and metaphor. It's a wonderful one for the process that's happening. Because we all want to be butterflies. So we can really relate with this. You know, the butterflies are beautiful, they're free, they bring love and peace and joy. And so there's something about the butterfly self that kind of, it just sort of cuts to the source of it, doesn't it? Instead of all of these fancy words that we can use. So, okay, let's turn this into a process then. You could feel where you are in your metamorphosis process of turning into a butterfly. Are you still mostly a caterpillar? Realizing that you're a butterfly? That someday you will be one. And in some areas of life you feel this more than others. So maybe you're still a caterpillar in your professional career or your job. We could also call this more 3D, right? Maybe you're more a caterpillar in your relationships, like I was talking about, where it's just a smaller version of you. We don't judge caterpillars, right? They just are. They're just in a different phase. So perhaps your phase of being a caterpillar in your social relationships was the one that's just been the most comfortable. It's probably because there's a lot of pain there and a lot of wounding there too. And keeping safe in that area has been maybe the most self-loving thing that parts of you could offer you so far. Whereas you may be more merged into the cocoon, this transitionary, alchemically changing phase in your spirituality, for example, where it's safer to go there, where you're meditating and then you're feeling your butterfly self. It's more of an etheric experience when you're flying, when you're this butterfly self. And maybe it's more with animals or in certain environments or in nature. I talked a couple videos back about the 3D, 4D, 5D self. So we can use this analogy today. We could say that the 3D self is the ways that we're a caterpillar still. The 4D self is this cocooning self that's also bursting out. Because that caterpillar, it has to burst out of that cocoon at some point. That takes a lot of energy. That's 4D. There's a lot of energy churning. There's a lot of, that's the bliss mess. That's with the sense, the growing sense of becoming this butterfly. And the butterfly, of course, is the 5D self. So you can think about this perspective of cocoon, of 3D caterpillar, 4D cocoon, and 5D butterfly self for yourself. And then relate it to the 7 areas of life that we offer in Soulful Heart, which I've already mentioned some examples. But emotional, spiritual, mental, social, financial, environmental. I think I'm missing one. But we list them everywhere, so you can see which ones fit for you. I'll link again to an article that we use when we start sessions with people, and it has you look at the 7 areas of life, and we offer what we feel is the 3D self, the 4D self, and the 5D self in each of those areas. So it can be a really great locator. And now, if you want to, you can look at it as your caterpillar self, your cocooning self, and your butterfly self. So let's go somewhere else with this, which is where I feel maybe a lot of people are, and the people drawn to Soulful Heart are in particular, or what we are offering, which is moving out of the cocoon and even more into the butterfly. So often it's realizing that you're even in a cocoon that's been necessary and beautiful. And at some point it becomes too small. This is the lone wolf phase for some people, where they've really, again, their caterpillar has really let go of so much. And then they're in this, you could also call it, and I have spoken about it, as the void space. So then, all the old friendships, most of them, a lot of them, the old friendships, the old relationships, we should say previous, not old, because there's not a judgment here. Just again, what the caterpillar wanted, what it got food from, is no longer the same as what this cocooning, metamorphosizing energy needs. It needs different food. It needs to be around other beings that are going through this transformational process. It's literally, if you imagine a cocooning caterpillar, that's all it's thinking about. That's all it wants to talk about. That's all it wants to be around. It's consuming this awakening process. And it's meant to consume. It is. So the distractions out toward the 3D reality, eventually they just let go, and then you're really in this cocoon space. To come out of it is to bring more love in, so that it's love, not force. It's love that breaks the cocoon and bursts the butterfly. So love coming in comes from the divine. It comes from soul family support. It comes from you. Because there's also the piece, because this is not a linear process, that you already have a 5D self. You already have a higher self, of course. That's your, what we call metasoul. That's your individuated soul source that, fractaled off the divine, way up there. Higher dimensional. And then fragmented into all of these metasoul expressions that I will be talking about in another video. And so your 5D energy self is just like waiting there, in a way. And as you let go of the caterpillar form and you surrender to the cocooning process, which eventually breaks you out more and more, part of what helps you break out is your 5D self, actually. And this is where Soulful Heart comes in, because we help you connect with the energy of that butterfly self and the 4D cocoon aspects, such as your gatekeeper, which I'll share an article too, that also help you break out, but can also feel really safe in that cocoon and don't want to come out of it. Some caterpillar aspects, I'm really going for it with this metaphor today. The caterpillar aspects of the inner teenager, of the inner mother, father, of the inner protector, inner punisher, they might grip. They do grip to the caterpillar reality. So as much as you want this butterfly self, and this is all happening in the now, right? So you've got this butterfly self that's trying to come in and infuse you with all these beautiful energies. And then you have your cocoon self that's sometimes peaceful, sometimes I want out of here. You have that going on. And then you have the 3D caterpillar selves that are gripping. So if you start really feeling how multidimensional this is, how non-linear it is, and how in every moment you could be popping into any one of these realities. And until, in my sense, you have a more consistent 5D self that's holding the space for all of this, this is what you become more and more. So there isn't this same thrashing going on or moving into 3D and out again. Or if it is happening, you're conscious of it and you're feeling it and you're identifying which parts of you are engaged in it and why. And this seems to make all the difference. It's heartfulness, mindfulness, soulfulness, brings your consciousness in to track all of this. And in the tracking, that's done heartfully. That's feeling it through. The mind helps, but it doesn't lead this process. And in recognizing this non-linear shiftings and changings that are happening, you can actually come into more wholeness. You return back to this butterfly self because the parts rest eventually. They may have another kick up. There's always more to learn and grow and integrate. The ground becomes calmer, becomes more held, less reactive, more trust, more surrender, more goodness experience. So this has been my experience. This is what I speak to you from. And I like to see things as physical. That's very divine feminine. So I have had definite phases of needing to cocoon. My ranch phase I was telling you about was one of those. And I really recommend my book, Keep Waking Up, for you to take in, because that is a full cocoon phase. Wasn't serving anyone at that time. We could barely even get online, so I wasn't sharing my writings, although I wrote 2 books at the ranch. This was my time to really feel nature. Nature provided an aspect of the cocoon that I needed. And then that cocoon got cracked with love, and I was invited into town, and a year and a half later, 2 books and serving people, and here I am. So this is more of my butterfly self. I couldn't have arisen into my butterfly self on the ranch. It just would be more cocoon. So this is part of the locating for yourself, is the geography I'm in, is the situation I'm in, supporting the continual metamorphosis and transformation into my butterfly self. And then you can ask that question about every area of life. So I'm truly amazed because I had no idea that this is what I was going to talk about today. So I hope you found it helpful and that it lands in your heart and souls. And thank you so much for joining me. I read every comment and I so look forward to them. And you're so welcome to ask me questions in the comments. I can answer what I can answer. obviously if we were in session space, or you were in session space with one of us, we'd be able to apply it personally to you. And we can do that through a free intro if you feel drawn. But your comments and questions mean a lot. So thank you for your participation and your collaboration. And I see your butterfly self. It's right there. And it wants to fly. Love to you.